All right. Welcome, schmelcome, to class tonight. We are on the worksheet that says the last straws at the top. We'll dive into it right here in a sec. But let's say a prayer, and then we shall all begin discussing together. So let's pray. God, our Father in heaven, we thank you so much for this time and this place that we have to gather together. And we've all been brought here. And help us to hear your words. Help us to walk in your truth. Unite our hearts to fear your name. Thank you for your Son, who is the fulfillment of everything. And it's in his name we pray. Amen. Okie dokie. So tonight we are diving into the end of, we are going to be saying farewell to the northern tribes of Israel, tragically. But before we get that, y'all know what time it is. It is time for review. Okay, so what is a prophet? Mouthpiece of God. And they are doing what? They're provoking people to do what? Keep the covenant. And also, the summary of their message. I need my dual monitor up here. I don't know what I'm doing. That's what I forgot. The summary of their message is what? Obey God right now. And then, along with that, the proposal we had a whole class on? Kings is what type of genre? The book of Kings is a prophetic book. And why is it a prophetic book? I'm hearing whispers and wisps. I hear you loud and clear. You're right here. You're like the little angel on my shoulder. Yes, it's giving you God's perspective on history. What we're going to see is then when we dive into the 12 prophets and we start doing an overview of them, that's giving you more of like a detailed, almost like poetic commentary on the happenings. We're actually going to start doing that tonight a little bit. And the central message of the books, all books, law and prophets is? All right, over here, say, love God. Over here, love neighbor. Love neighbor. Thank you. Great, wonderful, wonderful. On these two hang all of the and the prophets, and above them there is no other law. Okay, thank you. Well done. Snaps all around, I guess. Okay, but anyways, good job. So with that, we've seen how they have a coexisting relationship, but the inverse of that cycle is what? Like what starts unwinding reality, unraveling it. And the opposite of love of God is idolatry is when you put something else in God's place. Something else is there, everything starts to crumble, and then what else is the opposite of the love of neighbor? Social injustice. And we got them both up there. Wonderful. And then specifically against what three groups become this group? They're kind of like, y'all know the analogy of like the canaries in the coal mine? Y'all heard about this before? Yeah. The orphan, the widow, and the sojourner or the immigrant. What's some of our other synonyms we've talked about for the alien, foreigner, the refugee? What? The homeless. Yes, because each of these are lacking what? Orphans lacking what? Father and a mother. You got to have that balance. And then a widow's lacking and a immigrant is lacking a home or a king. Very good. Poor and then Okay. And then we've been going through this first kind of part of the divided kingdom, and we've seen Solomon build the temple, and then he goes on to fail. His next generation has a couple of rival brothers that even have names that sound almost the exact same. They're in contention, and then it just generation after generation of kings spirals down until, what we talked about last time, destruction. And then we kind of proposed how that is very similar to the structure of the first part of Genesis. And this is actually the cycle that repeats itself throughout all of Scripture. I'm not going to keep reiterating it throughout the rest of the book, but it's these cycles of creation, downfall, destruction, recreation. It's kind of a big picture view of how these cycles work within the story of the Bible. And then, as I mentioned last time, we talked about here in the latter chapters, or the kind of at the end of 1 Kings, but the middle of 2 Kings, how we see the destruction unfold with what guy is let loose off the chain. He's the one getting the teeth of this guy, but who's released on the kingdom of Israel? Jehu off the chain, as it was said last time. He goes absolutely ballistic. But also along with that, after the flood in Genesis chapter 7, 8, and 9, what happens on the other side of the flood? Sorry, right after the flood. What? Yeah, we begin sin again. But before even the sin happens, what does Noah do? What's the first thing he does when he steps off the ark? He offers a sacrifice, and he also plants what? Anyone? A vineyard. He plants a vineyard. It's a new little garden. And then what he does is he takes too much fruit from that vineyard, and he gets drunk, and the cycle begins again, as we just said. But what we see is after the destruction on the other side, there's like a new garden. There's a new life. There's new creation. Through that ark, that little vessel, is brought forth a seed of humanity that is rescued on the other side of the destruction. And then we talked about who is rescued from the destruction that Jehu pours out. And on the other side, he's put inside the temple, which is like a little ark. Who is it? King who? King Joash. He's hidden away in the temple, and it's like a seed is planted in that new garden. And he gets rescued through the destruction that Jehu and also, what's the name of the evil queen? Athaliah, or Athalia. I heard someone else pronounce, which sounds a little more majestic. But that is the first half. Now, for also the review of our map, Northern Kingdom is called Ephraim and Israel. Keep that in mind whenever you're reading the Minor Prophets. Their capital city is Samaria. Southern Kingdom is, and then their kings are called the sons of David, essential line that is connecting, unifying all of the southern kings of Judah. They're all the sons of David, while the northern kingdom kind of has different families that are fighting for power generation after generation. And then the northern kingdom, they built 2 cities and made them kind of like religious holy places where they put the golden calves. Are what 2 cities? Dan and Bethel. And especially remember Bethel, because we're going to see Bethel show up quite a few times because it's closer to the capital city, as you can see on the map. So it kind of becomes more of the city that's known as the place of corruption. And there's lots of key moments that happen in Bethel. So what we're going to see tonight that we're going to talk about is what big bad kingdom arrives and takes over Israel. Anyone? Assyria pulls up. They show up. They take Israel away. And what we're going to see is, and if you were reading carefully, what does Assyria do with the remnant of that land? What do they put there? They put people from other nations. Specifically, these groups that are called the Kuthites, the Hamathites, the or Ivaites or Abaites. And then does anybody want to take a guess what this group eventually becomes known as? This is the Samaritans. Yeah, very good. That's just a little tidbit to kind of be thinking about. Like imagine this northern rebellious kingdom that's already split off from you down here in Judah where the temple is. And then eventually they become so corrupt that God takes them away. And then this group that's resettled in there becomes intermingled with the people of Israel who are left behind and also foreign nations that have like moved into the area. That intermingled group is where the prejudice of the Samaritans and the Jews have when you come to the New Testament, where that all strife comes from. And why the fact that a Samaritan being the one showing mercy to the man who fell among thieves in Jesus' parable is just so shocking. Because it was just, this is a terrible group. They still worship their gods. They built their idols. They didn't even worship in Jerusalem. They were just seen as the outcasts of outcasts. And they weren't Gentile enough to be accepted amongst them, and they weren't Jewish enough to be accepted amongst Jews. They were just the outcasts. No one wanted anything to be done, to have any part with them. So, anyways, I just thought I'd make a note of that in passing as we're going along, just to give you a little history whenever you're reading either about the Samaritan, the Good Samaritan, or the Samaritan woman in John chapter 4. Okay, so I know last time I called the lesson Jehu's flood of fury, but it was really Andrew's flood of fury as I was just pouring out and we didn't really have any time to stop. So I just want to kind of reiterate on this first slide. We're not going to spend a lot of time on it, but just kind of repeat what we talked about in our last lesson, just to kind of, lock it into our brains. What I've chosen to do in this study is as we've been going through Kings, we're highlighting the corruption of the kings, and then we're going to overview the prophets. So hopefully what we've been talking about throughout this part of the class is then going to make it a lot easier to understand the context in which the 12 minor prophets are speaking when we get to them for our last 4 classes or so. Okay, so in review with Jehu, who was his target? Who was in his crosshairs? Who was he commissioned to just take care of and wipe off the face of the earth? What? I'm hearing. Huh? Speak loudly. I can't hear very well. Huh? He was after Jezebel, right? And she was married to whom? Yeah, Ahab. Ahab, he already got by a random arrow, remember? And this is the interesting thing is he bleeds out in his chariot. And where his chariot is taken and washed out, it says that's where all of the cultish prostitutes stayed. It's so his blood was washed out into their bathing water. It's the demise of the house of Omri, which is Ahab's father, the house of Ahab. It's all very brutal imagery. And I'll just, leave it to the listener's imagination as to what all is involved in prostitute bathwater. But as this is starting to just crumble down and crush the house of Omri, we see them transfigured into different things. The blood of Ahab washes into the pool of the prostitutes where they bathe. And what happened to Jezebel? Thrown out the window and becomes dog poop. Yeah. It's an irony. It's a bit of an irony because what does she do the last second before she's thrown out? What's the last thing she does? Did anybody notice this? Huh? Yeah. She dresses up. She makes herself look beautified. And it's a little bit of who said that? She taunts him. She calls him the name of someone who was a political assassin earlier in the book. Very good catch there. Thank you. She calls him Zimri. She's like, "Is that you, Zimri?" And Zimri was a guy who had this political uprising that eventually he got overthrown in 7 days. So she kind of throwing some trash at him as he's having this political coup. But Jehu means business, and also he has been anointed. Remember the anointing scene? The young prophet anoints him and then hightails it out of there. And Jehu walks back into the room and is sits down. And they're what was that about? And he says, these people and their talk. And they're no, what happened? He says, "I'm king of Israel." And everybody just falls down at his feet and is "Hail King Jehu." Again, this man had presence of some sort. That is just the instant he's been declared as king, everyone's at his feet. And so he just annihilates the house of Ahab. It's just an outpouring of all of this violence, where he then also goes to the priest of Baal. And remember, he throws a big party, and he's "I'm going to worship Baal more than Ahab ever did. Gather all the priests of Baal. Make sure no prophets of Yahweh are in here. Get those losers out of here." And then he just closes the door, addresses his captain. He's if anybody leaves alive, it's your head that'll pay for it. And then the whole place is slaughtered. And what does it become? Becomes an outhouse. Becomes a porta-john. It's dude, it's kind of funny. I think you should be laughing a little bit. But it's also highly, highly symbolic. What the house of Omri, the house of Ahab was in their life, this is just a revelation of it. Their stench. It stinks. It's awful. It's gross. When people behave in a way that sees other human lives as just something I can seize and take for my own pleasure, for my own benefit, for my own pride or greed. Because, we'll get to it here in a second. It's later on my points. But to just move along, the flood of violence that Jehu and the evil queen Athaliah bring about. Just a quick little review here. And Bruce isn't even here. I have a whole slide for him. But anyways, the two houses, the sons are annihilated by Jehu. But then in that chaos of anarchy and overthrow, Athaliah anoints herself and takes over the throne of the kingdom of Judah. And that's where we saw little Joash hidden in the temple for 7 years until he becomes king. And the verses up there are, Bruce asked a question when we were talking last week, and he was like, what's the verses for the connection of Athaliah to Ahab and Omri? And anyways, those are the verses. Bruce, I did that one for you. But anyways, I'll talk to him on Sunday. And I think he actually texted me a little bit, and I was like, yep, I just made a slide for you. But anyways, there you go. There are the verses. And then going on from there, where did all of this kind of originate from? Where did Ahab see and take something good in his eyes? And where did Jehu slaughter both Ahaziah and Joram? What was the name of that place? Jezreel. Very good. And what does Jezreel mean? Anyone remember? I just passed. It was in brief passerby. Jackie's over here going. It's like it means God has sown. God has sown, like sowing seed. But what is sown in Jezreel? Innocent blood. Innocent blood, and that's a thing that shows up. We'll see, especially next week, at the decline of the kingdom of Judah. Innocent blood. All the way from the beginning, when Abel was struck and his blood's poured out on the ground, God says that his blood is crying out to me from the ground. God hears innocent blood fall. Like he always hears it. That's an extremely important thing to note. And he says in the law codes, if you oppress the orphan, the widow, the sojourner, he's like, I'm going to hear their outcry, and I'm going to visit. He's like, I'll come and visit you if you oppress them. And so that's what's being poured out at this time. So Jezreel means God has sown. Now, we're going to be spending a little time in a couple prophets. Can someone go to Hosea chapter 1 for me? Because I want to look at this. I want to consider something. Was Jehu right in what he did? Was Jehu good guy or bad guy? Smiley face king, frowny face king. Huh?
Your action was good, but his attitude.
He was commissioned and released to do and was justified and told to do what he was going to do. He was off the chain, so as we kind of jokingly said.
But God also told Ahab he was going to destroy
What?
his family, right?
What?
When God told Ahab,
Ahab? Yeah.
he was going to destroy his family in the next generation. So Jehu was kind of doing what God was told him to do.
God is yes. He's using Jehu in a similar way to what we see is going to happen with King Nebuchadnezzar being released on Jerusalem. Because can someone who's in Hosea chapter 1 read for me what it says there? So here in Hosea 1, you're going to hear some familiar names. You're going to hear about Jezreel. You're going to hear about Jehu. Someone read Hosea chapter 1 and verse 4 loud and clear for me.
The Lord said to him, call its name Jezreel, for in just a little while I will punish the house of Jehu with the blood of Israel, and I will put an end to the kingdom of the house of Israel.
Thanks. Hosea is prophesying just a little while after the slaughter of Jehu, and he has these children that are given prophetic names by God. And one of them's name is Jezreel. And he says, because I'm going to visit the bloodshed that happened at Jezreel and destroy the house of Jehu. So again, was this good? Was this bad? What Jehu did? Thoughts? Yeah, Jacqueline.
It's kind of like the Babylonians and God allowed it to be sitting in captivity.
allowing that to not go down in the atrocities, it's like they went too far.
Yeah.
They did, people were back to use them.
Mhm.
Not that
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like they're almost like wild animals being released. Not that what's happening is good, but that it is justice in the ways that God is allowing it to unfold. Did I see a hand over here? Did I see someone? Yes, ma'am.
David called the guy on the original part, but he was also pretty violent when it comes to all of that. And I think he said he was. So I mean, sometimes we may not understand it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It may not work with how we think, but there's some out loud.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. He's using it for sure. And it seems that there's this downward spiral of even the people that are available for God's use. Yeah. Yeah. Because would you want Jehu as like your mayor? Would you want him as your president? Like this guy is a warlord. Like it's crazy, and like some of us it's like kind of almost humorous how he behaves. Like think about if you actually knew someone like this, like in real life, because this is a real person. Do you want to be buddies with this guy? No, he's terrifying. Is he a noble king? Is he an honorable king that we need? Yeah. Do you have a thought, Jackie?
He's what we see a lot of today, I think. He did listen to God, and what he did was what God wanted, and yet he failed to go far enough. Because then he turns to the sinner of Jeroboam. So he's like what we see today. People are saying, I love God, I mean, people are saying, I mean, the Bible, and yet they don't follow through and actually read it.
Something about the way you just worded that is kind of filtered it fresh way in my brain. It's almost like he didn't go far enough in some places, and then he did go too far in other places. The bloodshed in Jezreel apparently was too much. Like he was supposed to focus on the house of Ahab, and he shoots a guy in the back from the house of Judah as he's running away from him. But then, yeah, he doesn't get rid of the golden calves of Jeroboam. They're still hanging out, and they remain a problem even after Israel's destroyed. So, yeah.
Sin clearly says he was not careful to walk in the way.
Yeah.
So
Any other ponderings, comments, deep meanderings? Okay, let's dive into things for tonight. All right. So first up on your worksheet. So I don't know. I just have a good time when creating worksheet names, and usually it's the last straw, but there's like two kingdoms, so we're talking about the last straws, plural, which also is, I mean, it's kind of a funny name, but like it's also goes to show again, God has been like very, very long suffering in everything we've been seeing so far with these people that remain in rebellion against him, and he delays and delays and delays the final end. And we're going to keep seeing him delay it for the southern kingdom of Judah as well. But they don't turn back and they don't listen to the words of his prophets. So first off, on that little opening paragraph on your worksheet, if you look in 1 Kings 15, verses 10, 14, 25, what happened to like 3 of the last 6 kings of Israel? They're assassinated. It's just a political coup after political coup. Like this is kind of the decline of all kingdoms of the world. They eventually turn into this power grab that's just spiraling out of control, and one regime inherits the next regime, and it's like it just accelerates out of control until eventually destruction. And then we see this last guy the last king, whose name is Hosea. He tries to conspire with and become stronger against the king of Syria with some other kingdom. What kingdom is that? Egypt. What happens when Egypt shows up every time? I say hasta la vista, Bubba. Yeah. It is, you're nearing the end. Because what does Egypt represent? Well, first off, in baptism, what gets drowned in the waters of baptism? What? I heard someone say it. What? Sin. Thank you. Very good. Sin perishes in the waters of death in baptism. And on parallel to that is the Exodus story, right? We are a new Exodus people who've been liberated and freed from slavery to sin and live alive to God. So what does Egypt represent, spiritually speaking? The bondage of sin and death. And what they're doing in this, and what we've seen since they left Egypt, is they want to go back. They want to go back to Egypt. And what we see right here is the last king, he tries to make an alliance with Egypt. And also, it's interesting enough, this is, the letters are different, but literally it's the same name as Joshua. So it's like we had a Joshua bringing them into the land, and now we have a guy named Joshua bringing them out of the land, the last king of the northern kingdom of Israel. So keep in mind Egypt. Whenever you see Egypt popped up, bad news, bad business, bad for business. Okay, but now let's talk about the words of a prophet that wasn't listened to. If you want to look over, if you did the big thought question on your worksheet, we read about in 2 Kings 17 the end of Israel and why it happened. They didn't listen to the warning of the prophet. So, out of project, read Amos chapters 2 through 7 aloud, and what was I don't want to belabor this point because, hey, surprise, surprise, it's everything I've been drilling into y'all and reviewing on that almost every class. What do we see that Israel is specifically called out for? Amos goes to Israel during the time of Jeroboam II. And what were some of those things? Like those of you who did that little thought process or that thought question there, what did you see? What we got? Social justice in what way? Specific. Give me specifics here. Yeah, that was in chapter, I believe it was chapter 5. They hate those who speak justice at the gate. Think of the gate, whenever you read about the gate of the city, that was like where the council of elders sat. That was where people would go to plead cases and court causes, and justice would be served. Someone shows up and is speaking truth there, they hate those people. And then you said, what did you say?
So they sell the righteous for money and the needy for a pair of sandals.
Yeah, it's just like stuff that can, make my life nice and easy. All of the poor and the needy, they're just means to an end. It's like God didn't smile upon them, so they're just a means to an end. I can get a new pair of sandals by pawning them off. Yeah, this is the state of Israel that Amos steps into. Amos has a lot of repetitions and patterns as well, especially revolves around the number 7, which is kind of one of the reasons I really like Amos. But what else? What else did y'all see?
Trample the helpless and diverted the way of the right of the humble.
Trampled them, and it says like dust on their heads. Who's the dust eater? Who eats dust? The serpent. They're acting like the serpent by using dust to then trample people down into it. They're acting like snakes. They're acting like the seed of the snake, not the seed of the woman. Did you have a...
Yeah, I just highlighted certain verses in the book. The one that jumped up was the Lord said, when you gave the Nazarites wine to drink and commanded the prophets, do not prophesy. In other words, they would want nothing to do with that.
Yeah, and the Nazarite vow was kind of like this special vow that any common person could take to kind of show their zeal, to like have a challenge in their life. It kind of made them act like a priest for a little bit, be set apart for God. And it's like one of the things they had to do was stay away from wine. And what the Israelites are doing is they're forcing a Nazarite to drink wine. They're like, stop being all better than everyone else. Cut it out. Prophets, shut up. Yeah, that's a powerful one. Yes, ma'am.
When they took a robe as surety for a loan, they were using those robes to lie on when they were in Baal's temples, where they worshiping idols. And it was not just that they were using it there, but they were supposed to have returned it to the people at the end of the day.
Yes. Yeah, gold star. Way to connect things. In the law, if you take someone's coat as like a penalty because they owe you money or something, you are required by the Mosaic law to return it to them by the end of the day. That's because they didn't have a lot of clothes back then. They didn't have a closet full of stuff. You had kind of an outer garment, and then I have an undershirt. No one freak out. And then you have like an undergarment. Okay? You kind of have like 2 layers. Usually this one's a little softer, the outer one's a little heavier, and it's meant as like a blanket for someone if they don't have a home. And so like what they're doing is they're taking someone's coat, not returning it, and then using it as a little pad to commit sexual acts in a pagan temple. Like that's the state of things. It's just, when I was reading through these, there was quite a few that were really jumping out to me, especially in chapter 2. He lists 7 things in verses 6 through 8. They sell the righteous for money, the needy for a pair of sandals. They trample after the very dust of the earth over onto the heads of the poor. They turn aside the way of the humble. A man and his father go into the same woman in order to profane my holy name. And then on garments taken as pledges, they stretch out beside every altar. And in the house of God, they drink wine of those who have been fined. So, and also it says of their God. My Bible has a capitalized G there. I don't think it's supposed to be capital G God. Their God. They're serving Baal when they stretch out in that manner in those temples. And so they are worshiping Baal in this way with like money that's taken from fines. So like they're using the justice system to like pad their own pockets. And like they're using, their rich just get more and more rich. If you look over in chapter 5, look at this. Look at chapter 5, verses 10 and 11. They hate the one who reproves at the gate. They abhor him who speaks in integrity. Therefore, because they then impose a heavy rent on the poor and take a tribute of grain from him. And then all of that is so they can build bigger houses. But he's like, you build those houses, you're not going to live in them. It's not going to happen. And it's just like moments like that where I'm like, this book is so outdated. You don't have any sort of justice system that's being used to pad the pockets of the rich and people using legal loopholes to then for their own self-gain and pleasure. I'm so glad that doesn't happen anymore. Yeah. This is the state, and this is telling you about what it's going to be like in the end for any society who lives in that manner. And so this is where kind of the rubber meets the road. And I mean, we've only got about 8 minutes left, but let's drill down, if we need to. We're not in any rush. This is kind of, there is a prophetic role, not that you all are like going to see the future and all that jazz, but the church has a prophetic role in whatever society it finds itself in to hold people accountable in cases of injustice. When we see people living in a way that is corrupt and corruption, it's like, there's a part of the job of being someone who is like Jesus that you call that out. What did Jesus do when he saw the corrupt religious officials of his day using the temple as a place to make money? Whoa! It's like if you don't get passionate about some of this stuff, I'm like, what book are you reading? Like you gotta have some passion about these things. The prophets are extremely passionate. Jesus, extremely passionate. And God himself, Yahweh on high, says that I am a passionate God, executing justice for those who need it. So, thoughts on that? Yeah, Chuck.
Well, I just wanted to read 4:6 because to me that's the whole point. You mentioned earlier the long suffering of God.
Mm-hmm.
That he just basically comes back and says, "Yet you have not returned to me." I mean,
Yeah.
the punishment was there. It should have driven you back to me, and you didn't even do that, which is the whole point.
Yeah, and again, at the end of verse 8, he's done all this stuff, and again he says, you haven't returned to me. Verse 9, at the end of it, I've done all these things, you haven't returned to me. Verse 10, at the end, he's done all of these things to try to call them back. They have not returned. The end of verse 11, same thing. And then verse 12 is like one of the coldest, chilling lines in Scripture. It says, therefore, thus I will do to you, O Israel, and I will do this to you. Prepare to meet your God, O Israel. Because remember when it says God's like, if I hear the outcry of the oppressed, I'm going to visit you. God says, you better buckle up, buddy, because it's time. I'm going to show up, and I'm going to visit you. And don't think that you should be longing for the day of the Lord, because you're not ready. You're not ready. So
I'm familiar with other religious people, they can't wait for the Lord to come back, and they're not ready.
You can be ready. I'm gonna say no one's ready, but it's like no, you can be ready. Yeah.
That think they're ready
Yeah.
when they're not.
Yeah.
You know.
Yep. You gotta. Yeah, Bubba.
I like chapter 3, because there's a bunch of questions that he poses, and the answer is all the same. Basically, what they're saying is Israel, you're not hearing, and you're silencing my prophets. You're not doing what you're supposed to.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some classic lines in
Yeah.
the one I like, there's a like a roaring horse when he has no brain.
Which verse do you say? Sorry.
Next morning it goes, does a young lion growl from his den unless he has captured something? And the list goes on and on.
Uh-huh.
You know,
Yeah.
you're not hearing.
All
You're
through
not doing.
verses 3 through 6, it's like he asks actually 7 rhetorical questions. And then they just keep building up in intensity until he's like, well, if a calamity happens in a city, is it not Yahweh who's done it? It's like, you're not listening. You don't even know how to answer these simple questions. And the time is arriving soon. And here's what's also the context that Amos is speaking here. He's one of the longer minor prophets. And he's speaking to Israel in a time that is the most peaceful, prosperous era that Israel experiences, really. Jeroboam II's reign was like 52 years, I believe it was. And they had military victories, economic prosperity. And Amos just rolls up and is like, "Ah!" Like it's like y'all are all a bunch of cows. Like literally, that's what he says. Like this is, you can't let the state of the world be what determines your view of the world. You got to have the eyes of heaven. You got to consider things from heaven's eyes. That's what Amos was seeing. And he wasn't even like a trained prophet. He was like, I'm not a prophet. I'm not even a son of a prophet. And he's like, but I was sent by Yahweh to proclaim this message. And he's like, bam, 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 bam. So yeah. Yes, ma'am.
The same for 3 transgressions and for 4.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of showing that I think God is, we've used up all of God's patience.
Mm-hmm.
It's over.
Yeah, we talked about in the ladies' class that turn of phrase. It means, yeah, like a completion type of, it's like 3 and yeah, even 4. That's kind of like a completion. And he repeats it technically 8 times, but the last 2 are to Israel and Judah, so they're kind of count as 1. So he repeats it 7 times throughout the first 2 chapters. Yeah. Let's see. I'm the teacher. I can call the audit how I want it. So we're going to talk about the second part of this on Sunday, next Wednesday. But go ahead and grab the worksheet. But we'll end on this note. Like, go grab next week's worksheet. We're going to cover it next time. But just, we're stopping after that first box. The center of the book of Amos is kind of, it all revolves around chapter 5, which 3 times in verse 4, verse 6, and verse 14, God says, seek good and not evil. This is verse 14. Seek good and not evil, that you may live. But then he doesn't say that in verses 4 and 5, or 4 and 6. He says, seek me, seek Yahweh, seek good, that you may live. Because again, that's the first commandment that Jesus says is the greatest. When we don't seek Yahweh, when we don't love him, then everything else starts to fall apart and all other people underneath start to suffer and the whole system goes down. Everything breaks down when he is not the one who is sought first and foremost. And then this is one that no one actually mentioned, but one of the corruptions of Israel at that time was what would you call it? I guess you would say it's like it's an empty worship without the matching of true worship as well. They're only going through the actions and the motions. Look at chapter 5, verse 21. He says, he kind of starts listing 7 things here. I reject your feast, and I don't delight in your solemn assemblies. Even though you offer me burnt offerings and rams and your grain offerings, I will not accept them. And I will not even look at your peace offerings of your fatlings. Remove from me the rejoicing of your songs. I won't listen to the melody of your hearts. But do this, number 7, let justice roll down like waters and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. Like anything you do ritually, forget it, man. If you're not doing justice and righteousness, and as you read through the minor prophets, look for those couplings as well, justice and righteousness. They're in a little dance together. And just that whole section makes me want to like run through a brick wall. It's just like fired up, man. Anyone want to take the last word? I think we'll let Amos have it. All right, thank you all for your comments. And remember, second part of this, we'll do that next time, but also grab the next worksheet up here and we'll dive into that as well. Thank you all. Doop, doop, doop. Doop.